Welcome to UberCube, the podcast we discuss all things Cube, but with refreshments. This is your host, Anthony Adams, aka UberBear, and today we are joined by an esteemed guest. You, Emma.
Me? Who?
You pointed at...
yeah, that's true.
You know they can't see this.
True.
I mean, I can screen share if you like.
And today we are joined by an esteemed guest.
That would be you, Emma. You are the guest.
Hello, I'm the guest. Yeah. Hi, everyone. How's it going?
Hi, Emma.
Hi, Emma. Welcome aboard. It's going to be fun.
I'm just introducing myself.
Great intro.
We'll intro in a minute. And then who else we got on here that's laughing in the background right now?
Hi, it's me, a magic, also known as May.
And then we've got this guy.
Stu, hey.
Hi. So we're gonna have a fun episode for you guys today, and we're gonna talk about some of the curation that I've done in the past, about 2 to 3 years ago. And I've asked these two lovely women to join us today to really, I guess, run me through the ringer. I mean, that's what's going to happen. We're going to ask some questions, some tough questions. We're going to look at this curation design that I've worked on, and I really want some opinions. I truly do.
Sure.
Before we even dive any further, Emma, tell us a little bit about what you've got going on here as far as the Magic community and world lately. Got a podcast.
There's a lot going on. So I'm a writer for TCG Player. I do a lot of content for TCG Player. So mostly it's finance. It's not Cube as much as I would like to do, but it's mostly like finance stuff, budget stuff and, things you should pick up on the cheap. I'm also part of the Magic Online Creator Program now, so that's really exciting. So I'm looking to jam a load of Cube, more importantly.
Congratulations.
Also going to jam a load of Pauper, because I'm also part of the Pauper format panel. So I'm hoping to do some streams in the future. So lots of work around commons, which is unsurprising if you know what I do.
And you're also part of an amazing podcast that I was enjoying this week. You want to tell the audience about that a little bit?
Oh, yes. So I am one of the co-hosts of the Herald Torn. It is a bi-weekly podcast where we talk about what's going on in Magic. So lots of news, like product watch, any discourse that's happening in Magic, we tend to talk about it. It's pretty fun.
A little catch you guys do on there that I enjoy every week, and I'm going to do it right now and see if you can follow me. Say hi, Emma.
Hi, Emma. Damn it, cow.
Perfect.
It's fantastic. All right. So before we dive into, and we haven't even alluded to what we're going to be speaking about during this particular episode, but it's going to be the Femme Cube. And it was recently I submitted it to CubeCon 2024 for consideration. And I've asked these experts to come on here and like I said, run me through the ringer, ask the tough questions, talk about my archetype, see what flows, what doesn't flow, what makes sense, art choices, all the above, anything they want to talk about.
And the philosophy. Let's
the intent.
Put it out
the
there.
intent.
The intent.
And before we go any further, we're going to do the thing that we always do here at UberCube. And we're going to enjoy our refreshments / libations of the show. And we're going to start out with our amazing guest. What are you having this evening, Emma?
So I have some whiskey because I'm out of beer, because I finished the beer during the week. So my housemate gave me a bottle of Nika whiskey, which is Japanese.
Japanese, yeah.
Yes, it's amazing.
So I've got that with a little bit of Coke. It is really high percentage. It's like 50%. So I've got a very small bit in there because it's quite strong, but it's pretty good.
So the opinions of the cube will slowly degrade, bell curve down, and then come back up as the caffeine rushes through your body.
It's not like a normal shot.
I feel like that's a pattern, right? The quality of the recording tends
it's
to
very upside down bell curve.
Like waiting for the plane to crash after about 45 minutes.
May, what are you having on this delightful afternoon?
Gonna sell.
I'm on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. I have no strength today because my stomach is killing me, so I'm just having some water.
Some high-quality H2O. How about yourself? I picked you up something nice here.
You did. Thank you.
It's a fun one.
This is a Gizmo Brewworks. It's the For the Graham, which is a graham cracker porter, and it is delicious.
We are featuring some North Carolina brews here. I know sometimes you visit North Carolina, Emma. You need to check out the beer scene is significant here.
Mm-hmm.
My sporting affinity is in North Carolina,
so I hear you're a Panthers fan
and a Hurricanes fan.
Hurricanes too.
Hurricanes is better because we're going to win the Stanley Cup this year. But
Heck yeah.
Panthers, we can
All right.
ignore.
That's like right up the road. We can get there in 15
Yeah,
minutes.
that's a topic we'll have outside of the podcast. But
And then
yeah,
we're talking about some coffee, Hidden Pipe Porter, which Stu likes to drink all the time. It is from the Raleigh Brewing Company.
Thank
Let's
you,
go ahead and
yes.
crack them open, and let's get to the topic. We've got a few announcements that we need to do. A little
Thank
business
you.
in the front. Let's make this super short and sweet. Skipped over that so fast. So we've got an UberCube event coming up on April the 27th, and we still have tickets available. The idea is 64 players, cubing all day. I've got 8 cubes on the flyer. It's actually going to come out to 11 cubes. Plus, there's an entire free zone for those people that participate in the main event. I've got a whole battle plan laid out for that. It's going to be a fantastic day. I will include that in the show notes. And we're really looking forward to seeing you here. We also have a shout out for the Cali Cube Champs coming out on June the 1st and the 2nd in Santa Rosa, California. And they've got a sweet setup too. I will also include that in the show notes.
we mentioned this already. It's worth it just to, not even if you play it, but even just to see Aqua's Vintage Cube, which is maybe the most spectacular cube that's ever been created by anyone ever. It's ridiculous. Like artist proofs, artist alters, signed, like outrageous. Like, go check it out.
And then we got another one here that's listed up as well, too. It's going to be the Boston Cube Party. And I will include in the show notes dates and how you can reach out to that as well. I don't have that right in front of me. But that's another, it's amazing. The East Coast is just getting covered with cube parties, cube extravaganzas. I'm really excited about it. 2024 is the year of the cube.
We're taking over. Basically, these Wisconsin guys, CubeCon, all right, October 17th through 2024, yeah, fine. But it's time for the East Coast to represent in the cube scene. We're making it happen.
Speaking of which, we're going to be at CubeCon, October the 17th to the 20th, 2024. Cube submissions are currently open. Tickets are coming on sale in the very near future, I believe in May. Okay.
Remember, I had to step away
I
for a
think
bit.
they posted a flyer. That
Sometime in
you can
2024, there will be
Get tickets.
tickets for CubeCon available. Yeah.
All
It
right.
is coming
So
this year.
At some point.
that's enough of the year of the cube. Let's move over to the topic. May, take us away.
Sure. So this is actually a project that I've been pretty excited to go back to talking about again, because we tried tackling this topic before, and the problem was is that just me being able to bring this up and talk to you about it and what your vision is and trying to accomplish that has been an interesting project. And I'm glad that I got to partake to a certain degree of helping your design. But I would say that overall, your goal for the Femme Cube is that it's a celebration of femme presenting characters in Magic. And I think that it's a beautiful thing, and I find it really nice to have just a nice collection of characters. And to be clear for listeners who might be raising a couple eyebrows right now, this isn't just waifu cube or whatever, right? The point is that these are characters, these are interpretations of magic art and whatnot in a way that is supposed to be, celebratory. And a lot of what you've done as your project is not only just making it a functional environment, but also, making it a very consistent theme.
I think
And
the
I'm here for it.
celebratory thing is really what I love the most about it. And what, like, I always talk about the philosophy of the cube, and you can talk about that from a gameplay and a design and archetypes and all that kind of stuff. But this has got a bit of a broader meaning for you as the creator.
Right. I would agree with that. My intent was there, but at the same time, ignorance is bliss. We've talked about this on a lot of times. And some of my card selections and choices and art fixtures that I put in the cube were very representative of an older time. Like, think 1980s Conan the Barbarian type film sets, right? So that was the fantastical world that we lived in during that time period. So way that
not that I want to put you on blast, but
Yeah.
there was one card in particular that I remember pointing out.
it was a thing.
and
Yeah,
it
go ahead,
was
do it.
what was it? It was
Tangle
2 by
Wire.
white. It was the creature that didn't have
yes.
battle cry. That one, yeah.
It's
Hero to Blade Hold.
Hero Blade
That's
Hold.
what it was.
Oh yeah,
Hero
yeah.
Blade Holder.
So the card you're referring
Yeah.
to is Hero Blade Hold, and the art
Good
selection.
old bikini girl.
Yeah, I was actually. It's funny you both should mention this. I
I love all my magic cards. Bikinis.
was talking to
I'm
my
very glad
mother last
that-
night about this episode. I said, Mom, I'm going to record an episode, and I designed this entire game system, and it's all about empowering women. But we went into this whole conversation while walking the dog about as you just said, the bikini girl, my mom's laughing her butt
Yep.
off because I'm like, Mom, mistakes have been made, right? Like these cards, I just kind of walk through this as we talked about before, like the Clydesdales during the St. Patrick's Day parade, cloppity clopping, never even paying attention, didn't even mean anything to me. And then May did an amazing job of saying, hey, there are better choices. And luckily for me, they did reprint that card. But that's an excellent prime example of, and again, to quote my mom, she's like, women didn't go to combat wearing bikinis and chainmail, you know, Anthony.
Yeah.
So
Exactly right.
Contrary to fantasy and tropes, that did not happen.
contrary to 1980s
Conan
just
the
like-
Barbarian.
Red Sonja.
Yeah.
So
But yeah, I brought up that specific example because caring about how the art is representative of what you're trying to do is very important. And as you've refined your goal and, more importantly, broadened your perspective, and what you're trying to do now is just, you know, listen.
That is the best thing you can do in this situation, is just pay attention and listen to other people's opinions, like backgrounds and circumstances. That gives you a better way of understanding how you can improve, or in this case, improve the cube to a level where a girl or a woman can sit down and play this cube and feel comfortable and accepted. Because just imagine if like a teenage girl, for example, played your cube and she saw Bikini Not Hero Playhold.
Yep.
That's not going to be a great experience, is it?
No.
That's like, and I think people confuse empowerment with sexualization, and those are
Right.
two different things.
And so May's even, I'm going to give all my gratitude to May in this conversation because she was the first person. I said, take a swing at this, just pick it apart, tell me what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong. And one of the things that and I'll just say this, that I was doing wrong, this is an admission through learning, right, is originally I named the cube La Femme Fatale, which historically to me, that meant a certain thing like a spy, an assassin. That was where I was going with it in my headspace. But as I even went and researched what that actually meant, it was a lot more provocative than what I was attempting to do with the cube. So again, the intent was there, but ignorance is bliss. So I did own that. And another thing that I was even doing, I'll take some more ownership, is at one point I was just using the word female, female, female in the statements opposed to woman. And I had someone, again, it's the listing part, said, I feel like you should just be wearing a fedora and saying "see" a lot, right? I mean, it wasn't
All the
what
females in the magic space.
yeah,
tits.
see, I wasn't trying to do any of that, but that is what was happening. And that's why I love this community so much, because these people didn't come at me. They just said, hey, we need to have a conversation. And these were strong, really just well, thought out conversations. So yeah, it's been a learning curve for me. I actually put that as one of my final statements of this is a final note. This cube has been a journey and a personal growth cube for me, right? Not only am I trying to build this, I'm learning to be a better human as a result of taking this on. So,
and that's the important thing. You actually took time to listen when someone was like, hey, can we talk about your cube and how it's like presented? Because there will be other cases with other cube owners where they will just be like, nah, it's fine. You don't know what you're on about. And then they'll just shut it down. But the fact that you've gave people the opportunity to listen and realize, okay, cool, I'm not the expert on this because I'm a man, I'm going to have a limited sort of perception of this. You actually took the time and listened to the people who it does affect and go, actually, we need to amend this in a way that is correct. And that is a really good thing to do. And not many people do that enough in today's age.
One of the big reasons that I'm proud to be involved with it, just because it was a very good opportunity to take something that had a lot of good intentions and was a very good backbone for what it's trying to do, but really desperately needed that perspective. So that's why I was happy to be a part of it.
One of the cards I changed out yesterday, because by listening and learning through this process, right? This has been a journey. This has been a process. This was something I decided to take on that was 100% outside of my comfort zone and to see things through a different lens. Like, it was a challenge I put upon myself. I knew I was going to be going down a rocky road a little bit here, and I was going to make some mistakes, and I'll own that. And that's what I'm trying to do. But just looking at it, learning more, I was even looking at the card Ponder the original art of the mermaid. I cut it yesterday because I'm looking at it through more of a keen eye. And I won't describe that art to you, but it was a mermaid that's drawn in a very provocative manner. That it's fine if you love it, that's your choice. But what I'm trying to actually, signal within this cube design it didn't really represent my goals of what I'm trying to do, where it's very art first, mechanic second. And I chose to swap it out. It was a Doctor Who, and I'm actually going to get the one from the Secret Lair too. It was the Black is Magic.
Nice.
And I'm going to actually go for something that's more representing what I'm trying to do from a goal perspective. And that's just one of the paths that I've been traveling down this journey. And thank you, May, for helping me. You've been dragging me along this journey, getting me right, because we've had some cards that have definitely been challenged and deserve to be challenged. So
it's also a testament to like magic art in like the last decade or so. Like that art is changing to be less sexualized and weird and uncomfortable. So not only are you progressing with your own cube, with the Femme cube, but the actual art direction and the world building of these characters is being less sexualized. So it's a good thing to promote.
Yes, and I'm letting the art drive the choices, and I will literally, if I find the art, because again, the consulting that May has given me, and I'll even put it in front of, for instance, my wife that has no dog in this race, and I'll say, hey, hon, how does this art make you feel? And she'll just thumbs up, thumbs down right in front of me. She doesn't even, the card means nothing to her. It's simply the representation of the art as it's presented on the paper. And she'll give me an honest answer.
Of this game.
Yeah, that's how I'm trying to curate this. Art first, mechanics second. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I'll also add that Emma kind of took all of the things that I wanted to say right out of my mouth.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
That's why you're here.
I'm here for it.
and I will say, I was not involved, have never been, and will never be involved in anything to do with this cube. But what I am involved in is the life and the growth of my friend that sits next to me once a week, sometimes twice a week when we record this podcast. And I have maybe a different perspective, I will say, because Anthony and his wife, they have a son, right? Yeah. My wife and I have two daughters, right? So I've got the future of how they will be looked at, right? And who knows if they even consider to play Magic. They might never play Magic, even though every single time I'm sitting here and it's been a while, but I've got a deck out or I've got cards out there like, oh my gosh, those things are awesome. Who knows one day that they might play Magic. They might never. It might be some other situation that they're in, that efforts like this, right? And this is an effort that you've put in, and we're obviously hyper-focused right now on this cube, but it plays into the growth, and good Lord, we're 200,000 years anatomically correct, and my God, we're behind in our thinking. But now we're finally getting to the point where we're figuring it out as a species with this big lump of muscle that we have on top of our shoulders that really has taken a long time to catch up. Right. And we're starting to really get there. And that is so important for me, right? Because I am a man, right? And I've got daughters that are now having to go through life in a way that I will never understand. I will never experience. Everything that they go through will be completely alien for me. So any effort that is even close to this, where you're trying to change even just one person's attitude, if it does nothing but changes the way that you see things, then this is such a huge win. And again, as part of like the Magic community, and, I don't play very often now. I sit here in front of a microphone and, wax lyrical on Magic whenever I can and love to do so. But every single person outside of this that does something similar can do nothing but positive for the world. Literally the whole world. Like how much of an amazing thing is it?
So when I first thought of this idea, my goals, they hadn't materialized at the time. I was just happened to be traveling for work, and I thought, I really enjoy the character of Thalia. I always thought Chandra was just a total badass, right? Nissa and all these characters that are just cool as hell, right? Like, and I thought, I just don't see any cubes or the community talking about it. And maybe, unfortunately for me, maybe I'm not the best person to represent that idea. I just happen to be the one that had the thought materialize in my head. So I'm just going to start working on it. And I knew it wasn't to like spawn controversy, or it was more this was to start conversations even against myself, right? I knew my thinking, the way I thought about my vision and the art and all that was not aligned, as Stu just so eloquently put that. My brain is still developing, right? And this was a good chance for me to try to be a better person. And may carry on.
Sure. So, Emma, have you gotten a chance to actually look at some of the cards in this list, or are we going in fresh?
Yeah, so I did a couple of drafts on Cube Cobra. It was with a few bots, so obviously it's not the most natural way to get an idea. I did 2 of them, and I managed to draft black-green mid-range both times because I got past like a Liliana and a Vraska, and it's like, guess I'm the rock deck because these bomb like planeswalkers keep coming to me. Even got a Grist as well, and Grist is pretty sweet. So it's just like, yep. Just going to play rock, which seems sweet. I noticed that one of the archetypes is like Azorius Blink, which is one of my favorite archetypes to like drafting cube ever, and I will often force it, even if it's not great, because it's just so much fun to play.
It's pretty great.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
We talked about this in the pregame. I drafted this in paper last time, and it was pretty fun.
So I have the best card in Magic in Favorite Inspector in this cube, so...
Nickel goes in a jar for John Brostoff every time someone says Draven Inspector is the best Magic card ever made. Novice Inspector takes a nickel out, I guess. I don't know. But so to put it in perspective, and I'll include all this in the show notes, when we're talking about women and females, and we're going to be using those terms as we navigate through this, it's because not everything is going to be, I think the term I'll use is humanoid. Not everything is going to be human in its feature and form. Whenever I curate this, I've decided to dive deep into lore. I'm reading about every dragon that comes out, every creature that looks like it could be, it has eggs or it's nesting, like nesting dovehawk. I do take some artistic liberties in my decision to put them in there just based on, assumptions, if you will, right? And I'm 50-50 on my guess a lot of times, if everybody understands where I'm going with this. But I'm willing to be wrong with it, but I try my best to try to go through a lot of forums, look for flavor text that indicates. It can be really daunting. And then also, Scryfall has an actual feature where I can actually search now, and they did not have this when I started this, was I can now just query like female characters or something like that, and it'll just populate the page with all kinds of nonsense. But at least gives me a chance to filter, and then, I can validity check my choices, and then I'll continue to check more and more. Because I've had a few that have snuck in. We'll talk about that another day. A few characters that didn't fit the profile that definitely made it into the cube and may have lasted longer than they should have, and people caught it during the drafts.
That's a good learning experience for you, though, right? You're telling us about how you're trying to make this, not just about this cube, but your own personal journey, and the fact that you're sitting here and you're gonna literally tens of people are gonna listen to this and listen to your journey. Then that's a good thing, right? You're making it public. You're putting it out there.
There's dozens of us.
Tens of people.
Dozens.
Dozen is better than none.
Oh yeah, the rock package was definitely one of my big highlights in this cube, just because so many good cards. Just being able to drop a Liliana, it's just super early, is so scary. There's just so many good, scary, splashy cards. But
I also picked up the Liliana's Triumph, which goes really well with I drafted Liliana Last Hope. I drafted the creature Liliana, which the name escapes me for the minute, but it was just like, cool, I've got this cool little Liliana package going on. I've got a load of removal. I've got my elves just to ramp into stuff.
If only I could draft this.
As well.
Yeah, if only I could draft this against bots like all the time.
Yeah.
Because I would have some really, really sweet decks. Unfortunately, usually when we draft this, we have to draft against like good players. So
before we deep dive into some of the cards that we'll talk about, I did want to get back to the kind of that non-humanoid statement that I made before, where I'm really trying to go into that because this is meant to be.
I don't take offense that you call me that.
Yeah, okay, it's meant to be like a multiversal concept. So when I am studying as much as I can, and some of the examples, and I'll read these 3 cards that I have highlighted here, and it's Nesting Dovehawk for 3 colorless and 1 plains. You get a creature bird. 2/2, flying at the beginning of combat on your turn, populate. Whenever a creature token enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on Nesting Dovehawk. It just happens to be this majestic dove flying in with this like peace looking symbol on it, going over some eggs. I use the artistic liberty to make that choice.
The art is godlike.
It's gorgeous
on this card. It's
really
absolutely godlike.
very beautiful art.
Yeah.
However, I'm going to give you a little bit of pushback. I actually don't think it belongs in here.
Well,
I don't think that it's mechanically interesting enough for your environment, for the packages that you have. And 2, in terms of what you're trying to promote is just kind of like, yep, that's a dove, all right. So when we're referring to like humanoid creatures and their relationship to this as a concept, when I think of the exceptions, I think of, what is that? Tarka. The name was escaping me for the life of me. Tarka's a character, like a full functioning character. A Tarka's a way different beast than a dove. You know, a Tarka's a character with individuality and identity and whatnot versus a dove.
Is this one of those taking
Sometimes
liberty cards, maybe?
I took artistic liberty. I will admit that. I've also done this with Gilded Goose too. Not to say that we don't know. And there's some other cards that you simply don't know. I have an interesting one that I want to talk about that's not in my list that I've been debating on back and forth. And I'll give the reasons. I wanted to add Galta. Galta would be a huge green mega payoff, which leads me into what you just said a minute ago.
Galta's cool.
Yeah, but ends in A. Historically, women characters in the Magic universe or female characters have been represented historically by the letter A. That's my tell when I'm looking at, and then I deep dive. Am I wrong in my statement?
I would say that you might need to find a better method.
Well, it's proven
Magic
wrong.
naming is complicated to begin with, and just being like it ends in A, close enough is
no.
It's like Luca.
Yeah.
Ends in A. Luca is not female.
No, right. I agree. It's proven wrong. I'm just saying that, like, through that idea and using Galta as an example, there's no lore or direct statements of the gender of Galta as a character, not directly. Even so, I went so deep as to go into some paleological records. The modern art has a lot of color variety on it. The thing that in nature, when you have those rich colors, it would be the male of that species trying to attract, using birds as my indicator. Then if you pull up the modern art of Galta and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm not off base.
Sure.
I'm using all
just
these.
Remember the tiny hands.
Yeah, it does say that. It does. But it's got some.
I'm sorry. That's the only thing I
tiny
remember.
hands.
It's just like tiny hands.
I've got
Big,
tiny
scary
hands as well.
Very
I know
large,
the
scary
pain.
It's a
hands.
T-Rex with really rich colors on it. And that is a divisive point when I'm looking at it. So I am on the fence using the letter A that I said that is admittedly
You
an
could pick a
ignorant.
better method.
Well, it's admittedly an ignorant method. I'm just going to tell you that, like a signal. Yeah. But then I'm also looking at the paleological records, the colorations of it, trying to apply it to nature, and I just don't have enough to. The proof is not in the pudding to make the decision for incorporating the cube. That's the type of methodologies that I'm going about using, and then just asking. Otherwise, I'm just taking artistic liberty at that point.
Insert miscellaneous lore about Ixalan's elder dinosaurs here. Like, for example, Thrasta, who's not on your list, who is incredible.
I saw
who
it.
is a female character. It's like, is that something that you want to be prodding for? And is that really something that is matching the goal for how much of a stretch and workaround that you're trying to make it?
Yeah, I don't want to stretch that far.
Goal is,
and then using that card, would you mind reading that card since you have it up? Because there's a reason why that's not included. I've already looked at it.
Thrasta?
Yep.
I'm not saying Thrasta belongs, mechanically speaking. But I am just saying that big cool dinosaur in that category would be Thrasta.
It's clearly defined, but then it ultimately boils down to it cost 1 million mana to cast it. And that's opposed to Galta would have a reduction in cost. But then I can't clearly focus in on what that character represents to see if it fits the goals of my cube. These are all the different,
Sure.
I'm trying to do the mechanical balance with the art balance and then see if it checks the expectation of the cube. Is that a fair statement from both of you? Emma and May, you understand my points of view and how I'm looking at it? I'm trying to make decisions. It's a lot of curation, a lot of study.
The thing that you've been learning a lot in this process is that a lot of the things that you've been learning for gender markers and whatnot is not always the most concrete way of getting there. And the best answer is to just talk to people.
Yeah, especially in Magic, where it's made up and things don't normally follow the norms that we have in our everyday lives. It's different for a reason, right? That's why we play Magic, because it is different to the reality we live in our day-to-day. So of course it's not going to follow that uniform because it's a completely different thing.
Right.
Exactly. And that's my point. That's what I'm trying to do. Like originally I was trying to use a simplistic manner of gauging it to find out later that doesn't apply at all. I can't uniformly, again, going back to the ends in letter A argument, I can't take that and apply that and just get lucky spinning the wheel. It was really hard because there's some other two interesting cards on here. Would you mind taking these two on, May, just to kind of talk about why I'm wrong? And these both applied. I Lord checked the hell out of them. I'm
actually going to hijack it a little bit to bring us back to your previous examples. Sorry, you told me that I was in charge.
You're in charge.
A little bit, so I'm taking it. I'm bringing back some of the cards that you mentioned earlier, which was Thalia and Chandra, which are two of my favorite characters. And what's important about a cube like this is that creating a space in which women can feel like there are characters that we can find representative of ourselves in. Of a certain degree. There is a reason that I have a commander deck that is just a pile of Chandras, alright? It's not just because Chandra pretty, it's because I really like her as a character, and I identify with her as a character, you know? And being able to provide a cube in an environment in a drafting sense to provide for that, kind of gotta ask what your priorities are when it comes to things like Nesting Dove.
Well, I want to revisit that one in particular since we're on that one. The reason why Nesting Dove is in here is because through multiple drafts, removing the art from the conversation for a moment and simply based on the mechanics and what was happening, Stu can attest to this. The prevalence of characters that are very strong that fit what I wanted to represent in the cube, white was extremely dominant. Using the Thalia and those type cards, they're very powered vintage driven. They were just showing up more often, making my aggro package extremely deadly and almost borderline unfun.
I will agree with this. The white early on in this iteration was just off the charts, bonkers powerful. It was just an arms race to get all the powerful white cards.
Even red.
Like, that was super strong. And red was very powerful.
Aggro was highly dominant. So I'm trying to balance like the scales, right? So when I put a card like Nesting Dovehawk in here, it's because I had to eliminate some threat that was actually destroying the gameplay simultaneously too. This is a powered down card. It's not the best card. It does populate and make another token. It plays into certain strategies. It's not amazing by any means, but it made it so I was tampering down some of that aggro and putting out something that could signal something else. So you could, when a creature token enters the battlefield, so you do your, as Emma pointed out, some of the flicker stuff you do, they'll recreate tokens, you get a payoff for it, it's a signpost, then it kind of tries to check that box through the artistic representation.
I will say I forced this doing a draft on Cube Cobra. There is a legitimate 3-ish color deck, maybe even 4-color deck, where the populate, the tokens, the counters, all that kind of stuff are like, it could be very, very, very dangerous. Like, I would draft it. I would love to just go through and put a 40-card deck together that involved this. I see why it's in there from a gameplay perspective, but again, now you're having to justify it outside of just why it's in there as a pick.
Yeah. So, So I agree with you 100%, May. I understand what you're saying. It's not clearly defined as to what it represents on the artistic standpoint. So it is me reaching as a curator a little bit until I get something that's more clearly defined. Emma, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think I agree with May here. It's hard when you're trying to be like, cool, let's make a Femme cube, but I'm going to decide this Nesting Dovehawk is female. I don't think you get to make that choice.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily come across as the right message, if that makes sense. And just justifying it on the base of I'm trying to dumb down white because it's been very powerful in the past, trying to offer some different synergies with different builds or whatever. I'm going to make this a female dove because it works for what I need. That doesn't really give a good message.
Exactly.
Can I ask this question?
Which is why I'm pushing back on it.
I get it.
It's fair.
Emphasis on why I'm glad to be part of it, because it's just like, hey, hang on a second.
You don't. It feels like you are deciding the quote unquote gender of this Nesting Dovehawk to fill a particular need of your cube, and not thinking of the artistic message that you are trying to express with this Femme cube by having these female characters.
Can I ask a question? Does this send a bad message explicitly. Not that because there's a difference, right? Semantics are important. There's a difference between this doesn't send a good message and it does send a bad message. There's a spectrum there, right? So I'd like to get your input on that.
It kind of it kind of based on. So if I was playing this cube without any context of us having this conversation did not exist. Sure. I just sat down at CubeCon, let's say. I played this Femme cube. Which looks sweet, feel recognized and seen, which is great. I played a cube. I would not assume that I would not take offense to Nesting Dovehawk specifically because I would not pair that correlation with all the other characters in the cube. Now we've had this conversation where you're like, yes, this is in here because it needs to fill a particular role. I've kind of assigned a gender to it just to fill my needs. That's the problem I have. Okay. Having that knowledge is a problem. But 100%. If I was just playing this as a stranger, I would be fine with it because we didn't have this conversation.
And also, don't feel bad about roasting him. I am going to roast him.
No. That's why I asked you both to come on. That's why we're here. So, like, if I was just like a random bystander playing this cube, I would have no problem with it. I would not even think about it or consider it in that way. But now we've had this conversation and we've seen, going through the timeline and the theory and the justification, it becomes a problem because... Okay. Well,
that's why I asked that question.
That's a very fair question.
This is why I asked that question because it's not just it's about everything has to be considered to be a message. When you're making a statement and you're calling the cube what it is, now you have to be cognizant of every single choice, whether it be artistic, whether it be because I'm putting this card in because it supports an archetype. There's a macroeconomics almost, if you will, about all of these decisions. And I think like getting that perspective is that's so why we have you. That's
using the same theory, applying that to Gilded Goose.
Sure.
Are we in the same kind of situation if I apply it?
But I agree with Emma 100%.
There is an Elvish Mystic with a woman art. Is Magalai Villeneuve's Elvish Mystic from the Secret Lair. So if you want like a mana generating creature, you can use a female Elvish Mystic as well.
There you go.
That's your replacement.
That's what I wanted. I wanted problem solution orientation here. You both are crushing it.
He just wants you guys to make his cube.
Unless you're really sold on the food token and the token aspect that Gilded Goose creates, which I don't think you do.
No.
That is a good replacement. I know because I bought that exact Elvish Mystic for my Anzarag Molgod deck recently, and it's beautiful.
It's
and
beautiful.
Magalai's great.
So good.
So you both have won me over with this conversation. I will be removing. I'm telling you, this is what I wanted. This is the goal that I wanted. And now let's move into before we even get into kind of the other breakdowns. Some of these other interesting ones that are. I dove as deep as I could into lore, and one of them is Limrith the Desert Doom for 3 colorless and 2 blue. You get a 5/5 legendary creature dragon flying. Limrith the Desert Doom has ward 4 as long as it's untapped. Whenever Limrith deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Then if you have fewer than 3 cards in hand, draw cards equal to the difference, or 3. You get the idea.
Sure.
But this card was from D&D lore. I extensively researched this too, and it's very much pronounced as being a woman. Or you understand where I'm going with this, and I just want to make sure that one was clean for me. The same thing with the Tushi the Blazing Sky. I read that one over and over again. That one also did it. So some of these, and it's very few, it's far in between. I just kind of, as you stated.
Are you ready for the next curveball?
Are you killing me? Let's go.
I'm going to keep doing it. You asked for this.
I asked for this.
I don't
Let's
think
go.
Emmerich belongs.
The tough conversations.
Power-wise, sure, Emmerith's great. But that's a D&D character.
Well, I mean, yeah, but...
Wow, that's savage. Mate, that's even savage for you.
That's savage.
That's savage even for you.
I needed this
That's a D&D character. Where's my semantics?
You want me to? So I'll go straight up Cro-Magnon brain. Let's step away from the actual design of this cube and what the intent is. There were certain archetypes that purely suffered. As we said, aggro was king because the predominance of characters that represent directly in a humanoid form are printed in Boros. I mean, it just comes up. From my research, I saw it so much, and I needed some control aspects outside of Blink. And that's where I had to really reach into and start digging and reading and finding it when they printed something. So when I start doing these characters like this, I stare at it every pre-release. I read. I take my time. I go through. I lore scour. I Reddit scour. I wiki scour. I do everything, and I want at least 3 sources to say I'm on point.
Anthony, I love you as a person.
I'm trying.
But sometimes you see trees when you should be seeing a forest.
Yeah. It's a try so hard.
I know, you're trying.
So I've got a part of a solution to your like lore searching and trying to dig, like identify the correct gender of a character. Do you follow Jay Anelli on Twitter?
I don't, but I will now.
He is the lore master for Wizards, so he does all the story stuff basically and knows an incredible amount about all the characters, even the ones that, you know, from 25 years ago that don't matter anymore. Fantastic knowledge of that stuff. At worst, you can just tweet or DM and go, yo, is this person, what gender is this character? I have a cube. Help me, basically. and just pitch that, basically. And then he'll be like, yeah, it's X or Y. Done.
And if it's okay if I rail the conversation a bit, piggybacking a bit off of that. I understand that, fellow curator to curator, that it is very, very difficult to try to find a very niche thematic thing, and you're trying to scour and look through all these places, but sometimes the solution is just easier of just ask.
Yeah.
And what's nice about this project is that it is a good growing time for you, because it's a way that you can reach out and actually talk to people and understand how this is representing, you know?
Yeah.
No, I agree 100%.
And that's why it's a cool thing.
You're also taking on a bit of responsibility, I think, when you present yourself and you sit down in front of a microphone and you record something and you put it out there for the world to listen to, potentially. I mean, there's 6 billion people and literally tens of people are listening to our podcast. Then you're dozens and dozens. Then you're kind of, like I say, you're putting it out there, right? You're presenting yourself in a way that's different from someone that's just sitting around in an LGS or at their home. So
I feel like this cube has been worth the risk, right? Like, it's the message that I'm learning for me, trying to help others learn. If it's not someone else, someone will clone this and hopefully do good things with it. That's what my intent is here. Like, right? This is something that you can make your own copy of it and make it better, because mine won't be the most perfect version of this idea. I'm trying to balance the scales on the idea of checking the box with I represented the message of the cube. I'm trying to mechanically make this cube work. I am waiting years for printing. A good example, Emma, you'll get a kick out of this. I have an Aristocrats package that has been forming, the slowest trickle of forming in the history of forming, because they didn't even...
Judith's in there.
Because not until in recent history they printed a blood artist that was a woman. And I needed that. I needed that so bad because I needed something to really make that happen. But I absolutely, this has been mentioned to me before by multiple of my friends in our little circle. Why don't you just alter this art? And I absolutely refuse to.
That's not the point.
That breaks the idea of what I'm trying to do here. So this is the slowest building cube you've ever seen in your life. This is not something that 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you could have just made. Now
it's hard.
This is really interesting. So it's really interesting that you've pushed back on alters and proxies and changing the art of cards, yet you're happy to assume a gender to the nesting dovehawk. You can see where the
the conflict is there. The conflict's even there. No, it's fair.
Thank you. That's what I'm saying.
And May's already pre-gamed
not to put you on blast on your own podcast.
No, it's fair. It's fair.
That's why you're here. That's the point, right?
That's the point. Like, I'm very proud of I like to draw. I like to paint. I like to write. That's something that I don't talk about a lot. I enjoy that very much. And so whenever I do apply these artistic liberties and choices, they're not always going to be the right choices. I'm definitely taking risk and putting myself out there, right? And then even doing the podcast, as Stu said, I'm putting myself on blast. I'm asking for people to give their opinions but I'm okay with that. I can handle that, right? That's what I'm doing this for. So you're not wrong in what you're saying. The statement holds true, and I take all the feedback on the nesting and the gilded goose. We'll use two. If you find any other, as you two look through this list,
Yeah,
I'll put a pin in it, and I'll definitely look for something that fits a better model of what I'm trying to accomplish here. So I think it's fair. That's what I wanted to do.
Fortunately, there's just so many Magic cards coming out and so many reprints. I think you'll be quicker along than you realize.
And what's nice is that Magic has really pushed into everything has to do with commanders, so there's so many legendary creatures and so many characters coming back. Like, don't get me wrong. On one hand, it's like, man, now when I refer to Abeka, which Abeka? But on the other hand, I have two Abekas.
Like, look at the new Gisa's cool. I think Gisa's sweet in Thunder Junction. She's sweet. Like that's a fun one for cube. Like if I had another cube that wasn't just like commons and uncommons, I would be like, this is a fun design because committing crimes just sounds fun. It makes gameplay sound fun.
The word is
Speaking
when.
of fun
Not
cards
if,
that just
when.
came out. This time I'm actually bringing us back to the script. You're welcome for once.
Yeah.
It's not the curveball. It's the anti-curveball. I really like Stella Lee, the wild card, just as
Very
a
good
card. Oh. And the fact that we can have these types of characters be introduced in these weird and wacky situations nowadays is a lot of fun. How can I possibly gender this thing to fit? And now we have all these other cards that can fill that role. And I would also like to say that as a curator, it's fine to break your rules sometimes to make your environment work.
Regarding Thunder Junction, put some cards up on here that I evaluated from my standpoint, and one of them in particular, and Emma, we talked about this pre-gaming, was 3 steps ahead. Would you mind taking this card on, please?
Yeah, I love this card. So it is probably one of my favorite cards with Spree. So Spree is a new mechanic in Outlaws of Thunder Junction. It's kind of like Kicker, almost, but you have to pay the extra cost for the spell to resolve. You just can't pay the spell because nothing would happen. So it's a 1 blue mana instant. It has Spree. So the plus the first mode, which is like a generic mana and blue, you counter a spell. So it's basically a cancel. Fine. The next mode is 3 generic mana. You can create a token that's a copy of target artifact or creature you control. And then the third mode, which is 2 generic mana, you get to draw 2 and discard 1. It is a very flexible card. It will see lots of play in like constructed formats as well. And I'm excited for it in Dan.
Vintage?
I'm so excited for it. It's
Yeah,
such
it
a
may
cool
be.
card.
Vintage? Question mark?
Yeah, it's question mark. I may test it. I'm testing it in here. It did fit another role outside of the counter spells. I found, back to my original statement that I made, so from a mechanical standpoint, I needed to bolster the control aspects even more. And this is one of the few cards that actually gave me like a pseudo hard counter outside of, otherwise it was stuff that just made me pay 2 additional, etc. That's been a challenge in this cube too, is to really find cards that increase the gameplay and fit the mechanics and fit the requirements of the cube from, there's a lot of dimensions whenever I'm trying to make these choices. So I'm glad you both like that one. I put other cards on this list, and May, you talked about Stella Lee, the wild card. I'm debating on this one. I didn't order it just now, but I think it's interesting. It's for 1 colorless, and you get a legendary creature human rogue. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, exile the top card of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play that card, or you could tap it, copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. Activate only if you've cast 3 or more spells this turn for a 2/4. That's a lot of mechanical hoops to jump through, though. Emma just did.
It's definitely a commander card in cube, but like, yeah, I love her.
It was cool.
She makes
I looked
my
at
Jenny
it.
brain go burr.
Yeah, it's gorgeous art, and everything about it did everything I wanted, but it was just not. It wasn't mechanically strong enough. It didn't actually support an archetype. So that's another thing. I have to not only take this cube and not make it this artistic expression, but simultaneously also have to make this cube playable. And that has been really hard, which kind of leads me to my next card that's interesting, and I've been staring at it and I didn't order it. Ultimately, I don't think I'm going to add it. Is Step Between Worlds. For 3 colorless and 2 blue, you get a sorcery. Each player may shuffle their hand and graveyard into their library. Each player who does draws 7 cards, exile Step Between Worlds, and it has Plot, which is the one where you can kind of lay it out. That's a cool mechanic. I love Plot so much. For 4 colorless and 2 blue. I have stared and stared at this card trying to figure out, but mechanically, there's not a real payoff to really be doing this in this cube as much as I want. Because I'm not running the Shieldred's draw 7 deck. I'm not doing it. I don't have the Orcish Bowmasters. I don't have all these things. And
well, it's a May, so it's really not going to work too well with
Yeah. You don't. Do you have Narset? The blue one? Mono blue?
No,
Narset's
it's
not.
really strong. And
That's-
yeah, Narset's really good. So I have to power balance while doing this too. And I think Narset is a wee bit much because this is a mid-powered cube, you know, and I'm really trying to keep this. Like, if I can support aristocrats, that could be a real signpost of the power level of the cube. I'm not stepping up to that powered vintage level. So I'm really just sitting right there on that line of rare peasant type cube. So it's got its challenges. It's hard. May?
I know that as a cube curator, I get that.
Yeah, it's a dance trying to make this work. Trying to make it beautiful and fun is really not easy sometimes. May, you would know this best. Like, you've got all these rules and restrictions with the fake cube, right? And they have their own challenges. You're trying to do budgetary restriction. You're trying to do thematic restriction. You're trying to do gameplay aspects. It's a very dynamic cube, and it's really hard to check all these boxes all the time.
You're caught in a juggling act.
I'm
and that's
constantly,
why, that's why it's always nice to, you know, kind of bring you back down to ground level and be like, hey, it's okay to ask for help. You don't have to do it all yourself.
It's literally what I did at
Outsource.
CubeCon. Like, getting access to, like, because my peasant cube was part of the main event, so getting all that data was, one, super helpful, because you just don't get access to that at all. Secondly, it was just, I made the effort of just like talking to the players after they played my cube and go, what do you think of it? Did anything feel too strong? Did anything feel too weak? And then over the weekend, you can just compile that, and in your head, you're like, more people said like mono red aggro is really good, so maybe I need to like tailor down mono red because there's a lot of tap lands and people are caught up in having 2-3 colors, that kind of thing. Like, I actually toned down aristocrats in my cube after that CubeCon weekend because it was too strong.
A lot of people we spoke to after CubeCon, both last year and in 2022, said exactly the same thing. They said that was singularly the greatest thing that ever happened to their cube, was getting it approved and played at CubeCon, because they'd never had that much data back about their cube. They got so much feedback, so many, you know, positive comments about this, negative comments about that. So they got all that refinement. And that's great from a power level perspective, but this is something that is going to go a little bit above and beyond just the, hey, I like this card or I don't like that card because it didn't work. I mean, thematically, it's probably not going to be the case, right? People are competitive there. They want to win. Now you've got to think about something a little bit outside of just it did or didn't work in the archetype.
It's extremely multifaceted. And that's why this is... You asked me before what was my magma opus, and I said the artifact cube. The artifact cube is easy because artifact...
Your magnum opus
this is actually
is your artifact cube.
This is going to be...
Your magnum opus could be
I want this
cube.
I want this to be it. I
Right,
want to get this.
Not there
I
yet,
want to get this
but
right.
it could be.
Yeah, I want this to be right. So that's why I'm asking people to evaluate this and ask the hard questions, right? Could you take on some of these Boros cards to really put it in perspective what this was the imbalance? Could you jump down to the Boros, Stu, specifically? 'Cause
Sure.
You're very keen on this.
Well, Boros is I love Boros as a strategy. It's aggressive. It's like put stuff in, turn stuff sideways, reduce life totals, right?
Yeah.
Pretty common strategy in Magic. People like to do that. So Captain Lannery Storm, 2/2 haste for 2 colorless and a red. When it attacks, you get a treasure token. And when you sack a treasure, Captain Lannery Storm gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Comes in as a 2/2. Very strong. Thalia, Heretic Cathar. Absolutely one of my most favorite.
Iconic.
Man,
It's gorgeous, right? I mean, it's just
it's
the art
incredible.
is fantastic.
I feel like, don't hate me for this, but I almost feel like this is kind of dropping down a little bit power level wise in the grand scale of things. But 2 colorless and a white, you get a 3/2 first strike. What's not to love about that? Creatures and non-basic lands your opponent's control enter the battlefield tapped. And then maybe one of the most iconic Boros aggro cards, Aurelia, Exemplar of Justice, 2 colors and Boros. Flying Mentor 2/5 at the beginning of combat on your turn. Choose up to 1 target creature you control. Until end of turn, that creature gets a +2/+0, gains trample if it's red, and gains vigilance if it's white. This was so... I mean, this was the reason why I will say we've drafted this cube twice. I want to say in the last most recent memory.
5 years, yeah.
One of them was that Blink deck. 5 years, sure. One of them was the Blink deck. One of them I just drafted to try and be as aggressive as possible. This deck won me more games than any other card in the deck that I drafted, right? And is it maybe the most iconic as far as characters in the cube between this and the ones that I mean, Captain Lannery Storm maybe not as iconic, but Thalia and Aurelia, they've got to be pretty high up there, right?
Yeah, that was kind of what I asked you to read this because this is the
because dominant, I can read cards.
This is and this is the dominant
and I'm
strategy.
Understandable.
Ultimately, this is the dominant strategy. This is what caused the most problems from the curation standpoint was that tilt, that heavy weighted scale that I found when going through the lore and looking at the pictures and trying to study this as much as I could. This populated so easy, the others have been more difficult. I sound defensive, but that's true though. That's what happened. Like, I'm justifying my stance. I'm digging in, guys, but that's what happened, right? I mean, so I'm trying to counterbalance it with strategies that make this cube fun.
You can't defend your position with Aurelia and Thalia.
No,
that's like the lowest hanging
Adelaide.
fruit. And Adelaide, those are like the lowest hanging fruit in your cube.
Yeah.
That was my point. Yeah. That's what happened, right?
That's not a point. That's not a point.
Raven Inspector. Put another one in the jar.
Yeah, Raven Inspector is fantastic. Emma, I'm going back up to the Azoria section because you specifically said you enjoyed Blink, and I put those in the show notes, a couple of those. So would you mind talking about these and give me your thoughts on that section, please?
So yeah, we got Azorius Blink, which is one of my favorite archetypes, just in general cube. Also enjoy playing it in my cube because I really like the card Soul Herder. Not female, but just a fun card to play with.
Oh, it's so
Azorius, you have Blink, but I imagine you can just play like hard Azorius control in this cube. I know you said you had some hurdles, but it is possible, right? Because you have Sublime Epiphany, which is like peak control card, and you also have Dream Trawler, which is also a peak control card.
Yes.
Like I've had a lot of fun playing Dream Trawler in Standard way back when. But yeah, it's great. I don't know what more else I can say, really. Just some cool synergies. I like doing stuff on people's turns, blinking stuff and bouncing stuff back to hand. Drawing cards.
I mean, at worst, we have Glenn and Lundra and...
yeah. I saw Exclusion Mage in there, I believe. I think
there is an Exclusion Mage.
I was going to say, the last
I tried to draft an Azorius Blink deck, third time around, but it didn't quite get there. But I did see, I got, the Ephemerates and stuff like that, but I just didn't see any of the payoffs. I saw an Exclusion Mage, and I saw a Blade Splicer, which is another good Blink target. Or a Resto Angel. Resto Angel's the best one.
So this was another package that actually made itself very prevalent. As I said that Boros was the dominant package, Blink was also equally imbalanced and too powerful. Those are the two, those top two just literally wiped the floor with players. So going back to my original philosophy, I'm trying to do a beautiful message here. This is my poem. This is what I'm trying to write, trying to get it right the first time, the best I can. But simultaneously, I'm fighting is this cube fun, right? I'm trying to find the fun in all of this. So that's kind of the...
So how many people have played this cube?
We have a really great problem in our group. We have about 23 cubes. It's a blessing and a curse in the same sentence, right? So to have 14 individuals dispersed 20 plus cubes,
yes,
Cube Night becomes aggressive.
It's like, hey, we're going to draft my cube tonight, but I wanted to draft my cube tonight, and I said this 3 weeks ago.
Angry dibs is real.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
It's one of the things that I'm hoping that this year you'll actually get the opportunity for the Femme cube to actually get out there and get that good feedback that you're needing. And this is exactly the opportunity that you're needing, because broadening the perception? Yeah. Broadening the perception of the cube is important here. And when you are able to, if we're lucky enough to get it into CubeCon, and at worst, bring it with, or I will fight you.
Yep.
Yeah.
But,
you should bring it anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But being able to get that feedback not only from the functional standpoint, which is, like we mentioned earlier, easy mode. These are easy mode conversations of, hey, which card did you like? Which card did you didn't like? of, hey, did you enjoy this? Did this feel like that you were able to go in expecting a certain theme and feel like that you had that theme delivered? When I want to go into an environment like this, like assuming if I went in blind, right? I want to look for those characters that I like, that I identify with, whatever, right? I'm looking for those. And I promise this is the last time I'm going to roast you about Nesting Dove. But Nesting Dove doesn't do anything for me.
Don't make
right?
those promises,
and that's kind of the question that you have to ask is, what kind of questions do you want to prepare when presenting it to this many people?
Yeah.
And what do you want people to be excited for? Because the thing I'm excited for is I want to see the characters of Magic.
It's hard. You and I've also talked about the other game design philosophy of functionality. You and I have went back and forth numerous times about like where you've even said this yourself. We'll use, what's the laboratory you have in the Fey Cube that bounces wizards, the land?
Oh, right. The one fish, two fish, red fish.
That is the only reason why. Well, it's not the only reason why, but pull up this card, and there's a reason why. I'm curveballing you back here. I caught the pitch. I'm throwing it back. But sometimes, like the Fey Cube has an aesthetic as well, right? Too. It's a painting that you've done, but you've also said sometimes you've had to make decisions to make cards function to bring forward an archetype.
It's okay to break the rules.
Break the rules, but mine's a little bit more obvious. Nesting Dove is dancing on that rule line pretty hard. Yeah. It's like, ha, ha, ha. But you get where I'm going with this. Like, I pitched the one fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish to you, and you're like, aha, yeah, I can let it go. Because it was cutesy, but it was the laboratory or whatever that bounces wizards.
Riptide Laboratory.
Riptide Laboratory.
Riptide Laboratory.
Yeah. That didn't fit the tech.
It's not that obscured. It's enough of a setting that I'm willing to forgive it. And I think that it's in a perspective that might help a bit when looking at the Femme Cube of just being like, you know what? This card that I put in, it's not perfect, but it fits what I'm trying to do with the archetypes. And sometimes just making sure that it runs is good.
Yeah, so you got to have like a smooth moving ship too.
It depends how much you want to weigh up good play experience with representation of what you're trying to achieve with the cube. It's like, what is more important to you? Because getting that balance in like bang in the middle is going to be super hard. So there is going to be some compromises. You just need to figure out what you want to compromise on.
Well, that's a great statement to make. So let's ask the question, where is that sort of spectrum of the enjoyment and the balance and the representation, right? Because you want this to be a cube that fulfills that philosophical ideal that you had when you designed and built it towards having a functional cube, right? Where are you willing to take the most liberties?
Well, that's on point. That's been my thought process the whole time. If you look, I feel like I'm about 90% accuracy on the depictions, right? With a few that I have to explain from lore. The lore ones are a little out there with some of the dragons or whatever. If they don't know it, they're not familiar, they just have to accept it on face value. But the majority of these, the humanoid ones, I don't have to project that experience, right? I don't have to explain.
Sure.
It's just there. It's on the nose. So I try to be about 95% in my own mind. I'm an engineer. I want to have some level of accuracy, and I want to have a very minor amount of artistic liberty.
90% is enough for you as an engineer?
I can't be 100. If I go too far, Emma, you said this, if I get too far trying to follow the path of the art drives the cube, then I risk the idea of functionality and playability of the cube, and it becomes like, I don't want this to be the museum of Magic.
Are you that worried that people are going to value a poor play experience over representation?
I don't know. I went through the gambit of CubeCon a couple of times.
I would be happy if I got 0-3'd and absolutely destroyed. But I'm like, yeah, this cube's sweet because I feel seen. I feel seen within a very male-dominated space. This is cool. Yep. I would run it back. Like, I'm able to detach myself from the results I play with when it comes to Magic. Because
exactly.
My identity and, the representation is much more important to me. Granted, not everyone else is going to feel that way, but as someone, and I'm sure may feel similar, considering Magic is a very male-dominated space, it's just nice to have that corner that is ours.
Would you even argue, and I'll ask this question, would you even argue that the play experience, I don't want to say is irrelevant, but would borderline be irrelevant on the
It's not an
representation?
irrelevant, it's a backdrop.
It's a backdrop. Sure, that's a much better way of putting it. Yeah.
Okay.
Because it means I can also meet people like me in the space through this cube, because there will be, women, girls, wanting to play this cube, and I get to meet other women and girls who play Magic, which is always really cool because it doesn't happen enough, and it needs to happen more often. And if there's a cube or a playing environment that can encourage that is, I think that's the message of the cube. You've done a good thing. It's not necessarily about the results or the experience, or the experience of playing, because the experience of meeting people, peers in the space, same backgrounds or whatever, is much more important. But that is up to you as a cube curator. I'm not the one that's created it, but if that's what you're after, great.
No, I agree with you 100%. And that was the vision that he was trying to communicate with me when we talked about it. Well, it's already been a year since we last had a conversation regarding this specific thing, right?
Important conversation for us. So yeah, things are good.
It's why I want it to be involved. It's why I want it to be at CubeCon. So that way we can have those types of conversations and that it can be there. And why that, if worse came to worse, I would put it on for myself. I would submit it myself if I needed to, because I think that what it's trying to do is important. And I saw what your vision was. You may not have the tools or the perspective to get there, but the fact that you are asking is the important part.
Also trying.
Yep.
I'm going to keep this.
All you can do is try.
I'm trying. It's hard. Like, we've had a botched episode with this before. We've had an episode where we took this on, and we've had 2 episodes that we've just deleted. We've decided because the sensitivity of the topic, and this was one of them. And as you can see, it's a little bit of Stu's super silent, and there you go. I got Stu again. But like, it's the navigation of this idea, right? Like, I'm trying to do a good thing. I'm trying to put a good thing out to the world. And I want to make sure that I get it right.
I know you are.
That's the ultimate.
I know you are, because I'm sitting next to you.
My heart is in this, right? And I take all these criticism, feedback. I specifically asked for this. This is what I wanted from the 2 of you, is to give me the hard questions, right? The challenges, to make sure that I can make it better. So I will, going back to the nesting dove, I'll cut it tonight. It'll be done. It's gone.
Perfect.
Same thing with Gilded Goose.
I didn't like it when you added it.
Yeah, no, you didn't. And Gilded,
I just finally get a chance to roast you for it.
Yeah, you should, and as you should. We've talked about other cards too, but Gilded Goose gone. It doesn't fit doesn't fit the criteria or the expectation or the artistic or beautiful message that I'm trying to present. Right, so. Yep. That's the whole point of putting this thing out here. Let's get back to, and I would be amiss not to, I have a new card that I did add that I'm really excited about, but I will never steal this from May. It's under the Demir section, and I think it's beautiful. I'm excited about this card.
So,
you're about to get roasted
again. It's Layla Cunning Conqueror. 2 blue-black, legendary creature, fairy warlock, flying 2/4. Whenever you cast a first spell during each of your opponent's turns, create a 1/1 black fairy creature rogue with flying. Whenever one or more of your fairies deal combat damage, go target creature that player controls. The go thing, flavor text. In 1v1 draft format, it's just flavor text. But being able to pay forward to maybe sometimes make a 1/1 flyer is not nothing, but I like the character. So
I love the character. I love the art. And I love what this card does from a control perspective, too. Like, this is a gorgeous, just well-crafted card.
But I think that it's also the perfect segue card from what we were just talking about of, this is not a card that I'd pick because it wins. This is a card that I'd pick because I am the fairy person. Fae is like my thing, and that's Alayla. Yeah. I'm going to draft it because it's Alayla.
You don't care if you lose with this card. I care that this card's right there on my playmat.
Exactly.
Heck yeah.
And that's what I think that prioritizing what kind of play experience that you're trying to promote is going to be important for cubes like these. And when I'm looking at Alayla, sure, it may not be the most powerful card in this environment, but I don't care. I like her there. It's the same reason why I was really happy about Stella.
That's awesome.
Or, Stella, sorry. Go ahead.
We've all looked at a pack one, pick one of like a vintage cube or any cube, and you just gone, I fancy drafting mono green tonight, so I'm going to pick all the green cards. I don't care if it's like the worst color or the worst like support color in the cube. I'm going to draft it because I feel like it and it's going to be fun for me, regardless of the result. And the Femme Cube applies here. Someone could be like, yeah, I want to draft all the Chandra cards because Chandra's my favorite character. Let's make a Chandra typal deck and burn people, you know. They might not win, but they get to play as their favorite character in Magic. And that's cool because Magic started out as when you played Magic, you are a Planeswalker. You do the Planeswalker things. So having that there is just a good way to, you know, get invested.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to kind of move over to closing thoughts here because I think we've had some pretty good points. And I am beyond appreciative of what you two have offered. This is exactly what I wanted. I wanted that little bit of discomfort on my part. I wanted those tough... I literally asked for this, right? Put it out there to the world, ask me the hard questions, and just, you know, make this cube better. And I think you both have really just pointed some stuff out to me. Would you agree with that, Stu?
I would. Yeah. Again, I am your friend. I know what your intentions are. I know how you want to position yourself due to your personality, your love of the game, your love of people. You want to be an ally. You want to be, I hate to say the good guy. That's such an awful, I don't know. It just sounds terrible. But maybe that's the right thing to say, right? You want to be representative, right? You want to make sure that this is representing Magic and Cube and your cube in particular in the right way. So I think what we're doing today is so essential, right? Because at the end of the day, we are two guys who play in a play group with a bunch of other guys, and that perspective and that feedback and what we're getting today it's not just essential for your cube, it's essential for Magic, and I want to expand again outside of Magic. If this exercise was undertaken in anything else, any other game, any other discipline, this is where we should have been 100,000 years ago. We're just getting there now in 2024. What a shitty species we are. I don't swear on on our podcast, but that's the reality. We're a crappy species. We're just getting there, and it should have been a long time ago. But, you know, if we just in our little fiefdom of cube, right, are able to put out the message that we're trying to learn, right, or you in this case, because this is your cube, then, you know, we hope that this extends out to anyone else that is just trying to do anything. Like, it doesn't take a whole lot, and you're probably going to make things better in the long run, regardless of what you're trying to do and how you're trying to represent yourself, your family, your friends, your nation, your species, whatever it is. That's incredibly cliche and cringe, and I can't believe I just said that, but it is what it is. So I'll say I'm proud of you as my friend from wanting to do something like this, to put yourself out there, to be vulnerable for something that you've created that is completely outside of not just your comfort zone, but, you know, you're creating a Femme Cube, and, you know, well, you're not. Let's just put it out there. You're not even slightly a little bit like, and I've worn wigs and makeup and dresses in my life, and I've got photos. I'll post them on Twitter at some point. But you're not. God. And the fact that you're doing this, I want to see
those photos later.
I'll show them. I'll post them. They're beautiful. Yeah. So this should be, right, if it catalyzes another conversation, even just for one person, one group, whatever, where this kind of attitude of inclusion and I hate the word acceptance, but just forward thinking, modern thinking, and not 2024 thinking, because we're still in the dark ages as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. Common sense, exactly. Then this can be nothing but a positive thing.
Emma, you got anything to add as we close out?
Oh, I agree with that. I think if you can at least get one person just thinking about it, maybe if they're not, you know, a woman or a girl, you know, like if a man thinks, wow, okay, it's changed my thinking of how I should approach, you know, these people in the Magic space, that's also a good thing. You're sending out a strong message, and the more you just beat on that drum, the more people will listen to it.
May?
No, I agree. There's not a lot that I can add that Stu and Emma haven't perfectly articulated.
Well, Emma, thank you so much for joining the show. This has been delightful.
Thanks for having me.
It's been uncomfortable as I asked for. This is uncomfortable by request. And I truly appreciate everything you do in the Magic space. I do. I mean, the Magic space is better for you being part of it.
Yes, it is.
So thank you so much. Can you tell the listeners how they might reach you, Emma?
So the best way to find me is on Twitter, which is at Emma D. Partlow. You can also listen to the Herald Horn podcast, which is every other Wednesday, where myself and a couple of co-hosts talk about the ongoings in Magic. So that's like product reviews, discourse, any tournaments, that kind of thing. It's a really good way just to keep up to speed with the Magic news because it's just so quick. There's just too much going on. Alternatively, go to tcgplayerinfinite.com. That's where you'll find all my articles and all my content. That's pretty much it. Oh yeah, I've got a Cube Cobra link in my Twitter bio if you want to look at my peasant cube. I should probably plug my cube.
You should look at that as well. It's awesome.
Yeah, you got a sick cube. I'm going to actually include all of this in the show notes for any of the listeners, and I highly recommend. I've enjoyed your articles. I think they're fantastic. I've been reading over them, and the podcast is my weekly listen. So thank you so much for you guys doing that. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it is.
So, May, how might the listeners reach out to you?
Well, if you want to reach out to me specifically, you can usually find me in the CubeCon Discord. You can at me there at Magic, or you can find me on Twitter at Magic1. So,
well, thank you both so much. I just want to again, my hat's off to you. My fedora is tipped.
It should be cowboy hat.
Yeah.
Watching Anthony squirm for an hour and 20 minutes has been delightful.
Let's get to those final thoughts.
Come back.
Thank you.
Stu, this has been wonderful. Stu, can you take us over to the socials, please?
All right, first of all, big shout out to all of our Patreons, Keaton Schultz, Lord Justice, Chris Singer, Nick Lapointe, Stephen Conafile, Preston, and Sam McKenna. Thank you for the ongoing support. I want to say Patreon's been pretty awesome recently. Mm-hmm. Great support from everyone.
Yeah, they're taking care. Yeah, appreciate everything you're doing for us.
Huge shout out. Thank you very much.
Yep.
5% off your purchase at ultrastevens.com/UberCube. You can find us on Twitter at UberCubeMTGPod. You can reach us via email, UberCubeMTGPodcast@gmail.com. You can also check us on our Discord. A lot of activity there recently.
Yeah, it's been
Deckbo's channel, a lot of activity.
It's doing really well. It's doing really well.
It
I
is.
see those Femme Cube deck boasts when you start drafting it with those bots. It's pretty great. Yeah, get those rock decks.
That's right. Show us what you're making. And again, patreon.com/UberCube. All kinds of fun stuff that we promise will happen in the next 10 years.
Also, I am one of the admins at the MTG Facebook drafting page, and we're up to almost 900 members. It's doing really good, so you can find us on Facebook. An amazing safe space where you can talk about Cube. You want to learn about what the heck we've talked about for this hour-plus episode. You can find it on there. Pack one, pick ones, advice, what am I doing right, what am I doing wrong, how can I improve? Everything about Cube. It's just wonderful. I absolutely love that space.
Good stuff.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you both for joining us. That was absolutely amazing. Emma, hats off to you. And we're going to say the thing that we always say here at UberCube is Happy Cubing.
Good.